President Trump making it clear that government officials need to either get on the Trump train or get out of the way. Trump last night firing the acting attorney general, an Obama appointee, who would not carry out his new immigration order. Trump replaced the acting director of immigration enforcement, although that person remains deputy. And the border patrol chief got the pink slip as well. In fact, the replacement was named just minutes ago. Joining me now to discuss, Heather Higgins and Lee Carter. Heather, are you satisfied with the way the last 48 hours have gone with respect to communication and reactions on both sides? Because today Paul Ryan spoke about the order, and you know, all Republicans, I think, are on board with it, but he even voiced some lack of satisfaction with the way it was executed.
You can totally see why people would be concerned about the way it's being communicated, but I think what's important to keep in mind is that Trump has got an end goal, and he's advancing that ball so rapidly towards that goal line. What people have forgotten is that by leaping into this the way he has totally changed the conversation. He has leapfrogged the entire question of if we ought to be doing this, and it is now merely a question of how. So he is yards down the field on this one in a way that a more sort of slow and cautious and the usual way of doing it would not have accomplished.
No, we broke the news last night with the acting attorney general refusing to implement the order, and it took, I guess, an hour and a half after that for President Trump to lower the axe. It seems to me, I mean, you know, they were trying to compare it to mass firings done in the past by other presidents. That seemed to be an unfair comparison.
It seems to be a very unfair comparison. One of the things that I find really interesting right now is that anything that's left ambiguous is going to be interpreted negatively. It's just the bottom line. And so when we don't have the blanks filled in by someone, we're going to fill them in negatively. A lot of people
When you say we'll fill them in negatively, what do you mean by that?
The American people, the media. A lot of folks are saying, you know what, there must have been something nefarious here. This is him trying to control everything, becoming an evil dictator. And that's not necessarily fair. What's happened is he was stuck with an AG who was not his appointee, who was not who he chose, and who was not willing to follow his orders. And so what do we expect to happen? We have President Donald Trump, and we're saying we're surprised that he's saying you're fired?
But you do have some issue with the way it was rolled out, though. You thought it could have been rolled out a little better.
I do. I think, you know, I totally agree that he is taking the ball and going down the field a million miles an hour. This is a new D.C., a new day, and it's important that we move more quickly. On the other hand, we have a lot of people having trouble keeping up, and a lot of people who are afraid. And it's a job of the president to reassure the American people. He promised he was going to be a president for all Americans, and I think that a lot of people are questioning whether or not that's true. Because he's just moving things forward so quickly, it's hard to keep up.
You know, in the Air Force, we have a saying, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. Feels like we might be back in that sort of environment, huh?
Yeah, particularly in the Air Force this week. The reality, I think, for a lot of his followers, and we'll see what the polling data is, but we know that his policies on this particular executive order had 2-to-1 support in the general public. Now, admittedly, this poll was taken as a Rasmussen poll before all the protests, but who knows? These protests, a lot of them may backfire. If you were reading Twitter and the social media, a lot of people were very upset at the Attorney General and my sort of utterly unscientific polling yesterday. When people heard that he had done The Apprentice to her and said, "You're fired," they were just cheering. They felt they were so tired.
So on that note, Heather, do you want to see the axe come down even quicker? You know, listen, if President Trump's going to get his agenda through, doesn't he need his people in position?
Exactly. One of the great secrets of actually implementing change, it's good to, as Scott Adams has a wonderful blog out today that people should read, and it talks about the fact that if you actually want to achieve change in business or any organization, it's good to hire the right people, but what's really important is to fire the people who aren't working. And he is being very fast and systematic about getting rid of the people who are not advancing his agenda.
Right. I know some very successful people who always fire the bottom 5 or 10% of their employees every year, and you're reading the Art of the Deal.
I am reading the Art of the Deal. One of the things I want to talk about this is he talked about how important it was for him to always frame the story that he was putting out there. He said it's important to be sensationalist, but he said, I frame a positive answer even if it means shifting the ground. So if he was asked about a skyscraper that he was building, is it going to harm the area? He said, no, it's going to make New York have the tallest building, and don't New Yorkers deserve that? And one of the things that he hasn't been doing since this executive order was signed last week is reframing it for people so that they can see the positive that's happening. And part of that is he hasn't been allowed to, and the other part of it is he just hasn't done it. He's been very silent about these issues.
Well, one thing he has done, and this is from Glenn Ross, so you don't have to read a book, just watch 10 minutes in the movie. ABC, every time he talks, always be closing. All right, guys, let's leave it there. Thanks a lot. Coming up, what would